Welcome to Sounds of Resistance YouTube channel. The repercussions of the crisis in Ukraine in Europe continue with all its harshness. With its invasion attempt, Russia did not only upset the balance in the Ukrainian lands in the east of Europe, but also moved the stones in all of Europe. Even countries such as Finland and Sweden, which have remained neutral for many years and have not been in any alliance, have made official applications to NATO after Putin's aggressive attitude. Many NATO allies in Eastern Europe, especially Poland, strengthened their defense forces in the light of the events that broke out in Ukraine. There was a huge arms trade, and Eastern Europe updated its weapons and bought some superior weapons that Russia could not cope with. However, regardless of the moves made, it seems that some extreme moves of Russia cannot be avoided. A report published yesterday once again revealed how crazy Russian President Vladimir Putin can be. In the report, it was announced that 4 warplanes entered the airspace of Sweden and Poland. While there are many question marks about why this crazy move was made, it aroused serious repercussions in Europe. However, this sudden attack by the Russians was blocked by NATO warplanes. Going into the details of the event, Italian warplanes intercepted 4 Russian warplanes near the Polish border and forced them to return to Kaliningrad. This came as Russian President Vladimir Putin formally included 4 Ukrainian regions in Russia on Wednesday, despite the withdrawal of his forces, and Moscow further cut gas supplies, accelerating its energy war with Europe. Italian warplanes participating in the NATO air policing mission in Poland intercepted Russian aircraft allegedly entering Polish airspace, the country's Air Force said on Wednesday. The Italian Air Force said in a statement, 4 Italian Air Force eurofighters engaged in air policing activities in Poland. They carried out another emergency takeoff to intercept 4 Russian fighters after they entered Polish and then Swedish airspace, before having to return to Kaliningrad airspace. The Italian Air Force reported 2 similar incidents with Russian warplanes in late September, but the Russian military said all flights of Russian aircraft were made in accordance with international rules for the use of airspace over neutral waters. The event took place at a time of high tension between Russia and the West and Ukraine, especially with Ukraine's successful counteroffensive campaigns that yielded significant military successes. In addition, Russian President Vladimir Putin recently threatened to use nuclear weapons if his country needed to defend itself against attacks. Polish President Andrzej Duda said on Wednesday that the possibility of deploying U.S. nuclear weapons in Poland as part of the nuclear sharing program is on the table. The program allows NATO member states to store U.S. nuclear weapons. Duda believes that the absence of nuclear weapons in his country is a problem. Going back to the event, NATO press officer Matthias Eichenlaub said that Italy has jets assigned to the alliance's air policing mission in the Baltic region. He also said that NATO aircraft in this area regularly intercept Russian military aircraft that do not comply with international air security rules. Last Friday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg expressed support for Ukraine's efforts to reclaim territory held by Russian forces. Ukraine, of course, has the right to reclaim Ukrainian territory currently occupied by Russian forces. That's why we support them, he said. But continuing Europe's largest annexation since World War II, Putin signed a law annexing the new territory, which represents 18% of Ukraine, some of which is not controlled by Moscow's forces. Adding Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, Moscow claims 22% of Ukraine. But where all the borders will be has not yet been announced, and its own troops have had to withdraw on 2 fronts. The Russian leader's signature was the final stage in the legal process to annex Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine, and Zaporizhia and Kherson in the south. There is really serious support from the West against Putin's moves, and the Ukrainian armed forces on the front continues to deserve this support until the end. Kyiv says it will never accept an empire-style illegal land grab and has recaptured hundreds of thousands of square miles of its territory in recent weeks. Andriy Yermak, head of the Ukrainian presidential office, said what Russia did reminds him of a mass asylum. The Czech EU presidency said it imposed sweeping sanctions on which the West agreed Wednesday on a new package to punish the ambassadors of Russia and the European Union for their annexation plan. The Czechs even collected more than 15,000 signatures that Russia's annexation of Kaliningrad by Poland or the Czech Republic would be a just decision. If we continue with the developments in Europe, it's necessary to consider the developments in Finland. Finland's move to join NATO earlier this year may have come abruptly for much of the world, but Finns have been debating joining for years. In 2016, the country's foreign ministry commissioned a report on the potential implications of NATO membership. One of the three key takeaways from this report has been proven wrong. The question of NATO membership was not put to a referendum. There was no need to give voters a say, as recent events have made participation very popular among Finns. However, two other interferences correctly predicted that Finland would join NATO at the same time as Sweden, and that the main threat to the country's security would remain its unstable, unpredictable, and nuclear-armed neighbor, Russia. Now, Finland will not face this threat alone, but with the rest of the alliance. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Finns had calculated that EU membership would keep them safe, unlike the Swedes who saw the EU only as a trading partner. In 2014, when Finland's national security strategy first acknowledged the possibility of joining NATO, many rejected the idea as it was out of touch with reality. But Finland's NATO opinion turned out to be more than a slogan and was a testament to the characteristic pragmatism of the Finns. While the Swedes' long-standing refusal to join the alliance was related to their national identity, for Finns, neutrality was never more than a necessity, an act of survival. Until the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Finns considered it sufficient to work closely with NATO, to integrate military with Sweden, and to cooperate with the United States and Britain. It was clear that participation would cause a rupture with Russia, which the Finns tried to avoid under any circumstances. In the end, it was Russia that preferred a break not only with Finland, but with all of Europe and the West. In a twist that the Kremlin clearly did not expect, the debate over Finland and Sweden's NATO membership was transformed by the war, and the belligerent rhetoric that accompanied it by Russia's leaders, particularly President Vladimir Putin. The Finns recalled the events of 1939 when the Soviet Union denied their country's right to exist and attacked the country in the Winter War. More than 80 years later, Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine has influenced opinion in Finland and Sweden far more than it has questioned their right to join NATO. However, this situation caused Putin to wake up to his worst nightmare. Now, as we mentioned above, it's about to become a member of NATO on the only border that is one of its western neighbors and is not a member of NATO. The heavy losses of the once frightening Russian army in Ukraine revealed its true situation. The Ukrainians do not want to surrender, and Putin does not want to retreat. The war will be resolved on the battlefield. Ukrainians are defenders of freedom, defenders of free democracies, not only for their own country, but for the whole world. Their tenacity and determination for freedom captivates the entire world and strikes fear into the Russian army. First of all, it will shape the fate of Russia. After all, true czars are victorious, while those who are defeated are only imitators. Thanks for watching.